the sustainability of the community, the host community. Let's move on. Health. I mean, if you have to think about the behavior and conduct of human beings, if you tie it to their sustainability, if you tie it to their resilience, and therefore their attitude towards the environment, health has to be something you think about. So there was malaria. There was a big problem in Lagos. It was a big problem. And many of you know the story. Many of you might know that at least up until the late 1880s, I'll say 1897, mosquitoes were thought to be found in their host. And the host for mosquitoes were little African children. And so African children should not be found near people where they could transmit malaria to the Europeans. And so the idea was to keep Africans and their children separate from the Europeans, because the Europeans suffered from malaria and they often died, but Africans didn't. But their children carried this malaria. And so segregated living was introduced. Many of you today proudly walk around and say, well, you know, I live in Ekiti GRA, something GRA, Ikeja GRA. I think that's where we are now, right? A GRA. A government reserved area. It was changed in name. It was a European reserved area. This was the height of segregated living. And the segregated town planning was a feature that you will find across Nigeria. So if you go to any major old city center or town, you will see the elements. And my former peers will recognize what I'm talking about. You'll see the elements. You'll see a major road, you see government buildings, and then you will see the GRA to the left. You will not see African housing. Well, we live there now, but not in those days. And a lot of these vestiges, the reason why I'm pointing them out is that a lot of these vestiges still stay with us. And if I'm right, and I know I'm right, that I have future ministers and commissioners in this room, and I have very, very soon to be other major players in the future of this country, the older ones here too. We've got to get rid of some of the old practices that still permeate our policy thinking. What am I talking about? You know, there are many things in a totally different subject. We have, for instance, the 6 weeks leave. The civil servants here, public servants here will recognize what I'm talking about. 6 weeks leave is another euphemism for some 21 working days or something like that. When you calculate it, it comes to 6 weeks. 6 weeks leave. On that, for what? What is that? I'll tell you what it is. It came from the colonial era. It took two weeks for the mail boats to get to Southampton, 2 weeks in Somerset or wherever he was living, and 2 weeks for the mail boats to come back to Lagos. That's where 6 weeks came from. Why do we have 6 weeks? Does it take 6 weeks to get to Ekiti, Mrs. Ajayi? I mean, I don't understand. It's a total waste. We still have it. Why do ministers walk around with police orderlies? It's still you might not think these are hangovers of colonial policy making, but they are with us. A minister is recognized by the number of police orderlies walking around him. Why does a minister need an orderly? He needed an orderly when he was a white guy because, one, he didn't speak the language of where he was going to, and he needed an African to interpret it to him. And two, he didn't know whether these barbarians were going to eat him anyway, so he needed somebody to protect him from them. So So there is colonial thinking in our policy making, and we can remove it. And it'll be good if it'll be great if policy making shuns all those things. It is relevant in preparing, in recovering, in preparing and planning for our future, which is what resilience is all about. There's a story that I like to tell, and it's a very quick one. It relates to Lagos because it started in Lagos, but it's a Nigerian story nevertheless. In 1908, I said, oil was discovered in Nigeria. And a certain man called John Bergheim, who was convinced that there was a commercial quantity of oil, continued to dig and continued to raise money for this project. He continued to do so and struggled so hard that by 1912, he was producing 2,000 barrels of oil. There's some oil wells today that don't produce 2,000 barrels. In 1912, what's the story that we're normally told? Oil was discovered in Nigeria in 1959 or 6, 56. John Bergheim had found and was producing 2,000 barrels of oil in Nigeria. He came back to Lagos, he was so excited. He wanted to rush back to I keep saying Downing Street because the colonial office was at number 11 Downing Street. So when I say Downing Street today in this context, I'm not talking about the Prime Minister's office, I'm talking next door, number 11, where the Chancellor of Exchequer lives now. That was the headquarters of the British Empire. The colonial secretary for the colony was the biggest guy after the Prime Minister. So, and his office was next door. So he came back to Lagos, rushed to London to go and meet his friends at number 11 to say, found it, producing it, give me more money. This is it. Crossing the road, he was killed by the London omnibus. And that was the end of that, because his file in 1912 was then handed over to the new incoming Governor General of Nigeria, a certain Mr. Frederick Lugard. Do you know what he did with it? He put it in the dustbin. He wasn't interested in any resilient future for Nigeria. He was not interested. He said he wanted to organize the governance of these people so that they could produce. They didn't need any industrial future. And that was the end of that. What they did in Downing Street, you know what they did? They took all those studies and they went to a place called Persia, which today is one of the largest oil-producing areas of the world, a place called Iran. And that what was your loss was their gain. So the good old days, these people, they were not thinking about your resilient future. Do I still have everybody? I've got 5 minutes to go. Still there? Thank you. Thank you for hanging in there. I won't read what my friend Lugard said. It's enough of him. And I go into engineering and sanitation. You know, some of the great things that were done for ulterior motive. And so the future of them was not really thought about for the community. The tram service that we saw, why has he changed the picture? See, he spoiled my fun. I was going to show you what the Africans have done. This picture is post-1960. In fact, this picture is 2004. This one is changing it automatically. This one is 2014. And this is what the Africans who didn't own the good old days have done with the same marina in less than 70 years. So, I mean, clap for the Africans, can you please? Now, are these people thinking about the sustainability of their future? I think so. Do they have a resilience plan? CRO, I think so. And they're thinking about it for themselves. The self-interest was what we suffered from. So I'm saying to you that we'll be our future planners, our planners for our future. Think about it for ourselves as a community, not for yourself, as the British did. Thank you. I needed that. I needed the clap for that, yeah. Thank you. So that is one strong message that I couldn't avoid making, that, you know, the good old days and what the British taught us is not always so straightforward. In between these periods, there were slum clearances. Lagos was about 4,500 square meters was covered with swamp. So much of what you see as built up Lagos today was reclaimed. You won't believe what Lagos Island looked like. You won't believe how Victoria Island was created. Victoria Island was a beach, and it was a great amount of reclamation. Much of it was done after 1950 and 1955, when it was clear that it was us that were going to succeed to work here and live here and govern this place for ourselves. Much of the significant reclamation. Victoria Island was done in 1960s. Much of Surulere, the new Lagos city, Ebute Metta, what was used to create Third Mainland Bridge. These were things that were done, future planning for ourselves. So despite our tragic past, we're not without the ability to sustain a plan for our sustainable future and a plan for our resilience. The Lagos Executive Development Board was a very key part of our history, the LEDB, what is now known as the LSDPC. But it didn't start off life like that. The LEDB was a European tool to redesign Lagos. Lagos wasn't being built by a master plan by the Europeans. No. I challenge anybody to produce a master plan of that time. There were no master plans. But we master plan today. It was being dealt with site by site to make Lagos more comfortable for the Europeans and to keep the Africans separate away. So anything that was done to prepare a good place like Yaba for the Africans was done to keep them there and make sure that they didn't come to enjoy that. I have a lovely quote somewhere here that I'm sure I will not find now that I'm looking for it. And all the definition of the slum developments. And then you found, as a result, chunks and chunks of blighted areas. And these blighted areas still remain today. It wasn't an accident that we have blighted areas. We have blighted areas because of the neglect in planning. You wouldn't find the vestiges of old blighted areas in the Ikoyi area, would you? You wouldn't. Now you find some shanties and what have you, which is as a result of parasitic living off what is a good development and a well-planned area. But the blighted areas are on the other side of the water, which the Europeans had decided they would not live in. So I've got a big message at the end, so let me just get there. Yes, and then, this is a good point. This is a good point. So when LEDB then handed over to an Africanized group of people, LEDB, Lagos Executive Development Board, that was the major tool of affecting our spatial area, of affecting our sustainable future, of trying to plan for our future, whether you like it or not. LEDB was that tool. There was no other thing. And it was built, it was designed to run independent of government, which at the time was Lagos Town Council. It was funded straight from England. Why? Because I said it was a European tool and they couldn't leave it in the hands of Africans. But by the 50s, as self-rule was coming on, this was Africanized and handed over to us. Do you know what we did? Do you know what we did? All the policies that were left behind by the British, we just dusted them up and continued them. We continued to behave as if we were British people. It took a while until that was shaken off. So you still found LEDB people evicting people just because they were poor. Declaring houses slums just because the whole area was needed for a redesign. And that's part of our tragedy. And this is what I believe has to stop. We have to depart ourselves from the history and the history of what the history of colonial planning. I know some architects don't like town planners or the effect they have on their work. But the built-up space is made up of all of you, all of us. So the built-up space, in whichever role that you play, we must make sure that in the policy making, we don't hold ourselves hostages. It is clear that many vestiges of the colonial policy still lurk around Nigerian officialdom. Therefore, it is likely and indeed true that they exist in the spatial planning and sustainable thinking. We must be conscious of this. We must learn from history. Well, as you all know, and I spoke about it earlier on, the Eco-Atlantic City project, which I don't advocate for, was born in 2006 out of a need to halt the erosion since the construction of the moles, and which had visited a high rate of landmass loss. There was nothing to do. Doing nothing was not an option. We can only conclude, and this is my conclusion, and it's already put up my last slide. We can only conclude that Lagos, at least those of us who call Lagos and Nigeria their home, we desire to absorb, recover, prepare, and plan for the future proofing of Lagos for tomorrow's shocks. Let me show my bias instantly by quoting one particular past governor. And my bias is obvious. I'm quoting Babatunde Raji Fashola in 2009. In Lagos, we are proud of our renown for enterprise and creativity. Therefore, in many respects, generations to come will forever be building Lagos. I thank you for your time.
You can do better for the son. You can do better. You know, that's a son with a lot of history right there. You know. Thank you so much, sir, for educating us on our history and the history of Lagos as well. You know, I believe we've learned one or two things about what the son has said. So we need to think about our resilience and our future. Don't do it for yourself. Do it for ourselves. It's a collective effort, and think about the future. He also said we should get rid of the old practices, you know. And let me say it boldly again. Let me be bold about this again. You see, one of the old practices is that in architecture, is that they will tell you when you design your toilet and bath, the window should be 600 mm. Am I right or wrong? Am I right or wrong? I'm wrong. That's what they taught us in school. They said the window should be 600 mm. But now, that's an old practice, you know. Who says my window can be 1 meter? Who says it can be 1.2? You know, think of any size for your toilet and bath window. Hello? Leave the 600 for the old practices, an old practice, you get. So quickly, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be having a product presentation as well from Thinkrit Global. Thinkrit Global, are you ready? Please, a round of applause for Thinkrit Global. If you are still new here, this is the Lagos Architects Forum 2004 Laf 15.0, and we are talking about Lagos resilience and climate adaptation. Thinkrit Global.
Thank you very much. Good day to everyone seated, architects, construction professionals, students. I greet you all. Standing on existing protocols. My name is Anyonwenu Kadichat Abiola. I'm a certified concrete protection and restoration expert, and I'm assigned the role of technical director for Thinkrit Global Company Limited, as well as the country manager for Velocity. So if you are like the stairs, just the third boat from your left, you'll find our stand. I'd like to share a little experience. Just a little about 10 years ago, I participated on a project that focused on the causes of structural failures in buildings. The case study of the project was Lagos. And what we did was to compile certain data. We looked at structures that had been constructed between 0 to 5 years. We looked at some others that have spanned 10 years. And then the last statistics was between 10 to 20 years. And from the observation, about 60% of the structures have started to deteriorate just in the first 5 years. 10 years down the line, some of them are, they are just in a critical state, especially the structures very close to the lagoon. So we did some tests. We conducted some non-destructive tests. We compiled the results. And this was an eye-opener for me because as at then, I was just practicing civil engineering. And, you know, we're all about the design, putting the structures in place. But the critical aspect of sustainability was not so much focused on at the time. So this brings me to my presentation today, that as architects, the power is in our pen. Are we truly designing for the structures to fail at 5 years or 10 years or 20 years? At least the minimum lifespan, if you agree with me, should be 75 years for a concrete structure, minimum. But here we have deterioration already happening as at the 3rd year. What's the cause? Of course, we look at development of shrinkage cracks, settlements, and then due to the fact that the structures are close to the lagoon, ingress of water from the substructure causes the structural element to start to lose its integrity. So now that I'm working with Fincrete Global Company Limited, and then Velocit as a company is a manufacturer of construction chemicals that mitigates some of these causes of failures. So this is an overview of what we do. You can see from this diagram, we have the basement waterproofing, we have the industrial flooring, exterior wall protection, water tank waterproofing, terrace, podium, swimming pool waterproofing. This is a suspended swimming pool. So the topic is the specification guide on concrete protection and restoration. How can architects be of help? This is the table of contents. Fincrete at a glance. Looking at this picture, most of the structures in the high-end buildings are looking like this. You have the concrete decks. Why? We want to put our external units, some for the purpose of recreation. You have terraces, decks. Most of the architects are designing this. But then, what protection are we putting in place? Because the decks are suspended, and you have this apartment directly below these decks, exposed to UV radiation, exposed to water ingress. What protection are we putting in place? What measures are we putting in place? So let's get to know Fincrete. Fincrete is a brand that cares about creating a safe haven on concrete construction by offering solutions that deliver sustainability and performance. This is the bedrock for us at Fincrete. We are with you from start to the finish. The picture by the slide there are representatives of Velocit in various countries. We are represented in over 30 countries. I'm right there in the picture representing Nigeria, my colleagues in Cameroon, Ghana, Sudan, Europe, UK. Let me just stop there. It means the brand is widely accepted because it is performing and it is creating value to the project which it is being adopted. At Fincrete, we develop, manufacture and market solutions for waterproofing, protecting and repairing. This is our production site. This is the headquarters in Germany. Per hour, we have a production of close to 20 tons. Also, research and development is always ongoing. At least in a year, we conduct nothing less than 3 trainings annually. We train interns, students, professionals that are interested in designing not to fail. Who started Velocit? Velocit was founded by Jens Offel. Jens is a doctor of analytical chemistry, and he has put in almost 30 years of work into construction chemical development. Various research was done. You know, before he was able to develop the Velocit brand, what's the idea behind the Velocit brand? How can we make construction faster? How can we shorten the distance in making sure construction chemicals are available for every country across the globe? You know, we started in 2013, and by the grace of God, we now have presence in over 30 countries. That's growth. Distribution, sales outlets, proposed expansion of manufacturing facilities. Wow. Okay, so we have just a few minutes to go. Now, I'm talking about the technical aspect and also the business aspect. For us to be able to start a manufacturing facility in Nigeria, we need to increase the demand. How can we achieve that? We need specifiers. I just mentioned earlier that the power is in our pen. Are we designing to fail? Are we designing to succeed? Can we design our structures to perform for over 75 years? The previous speaker, San, he showed us a structure, one of the cathedrals. I think I still see that cathedral very close to UBA Marina. So that is performance. Our solutions. Okay, waterproofing represents about 60% of our turnover. We do flat roofs, terraces, balconies. That's taking 20%. 30% goes to foundation. We've done several basements, underground tanks, retaining structures. 10% water tank wet areas. Protecting and repairing, we've done about 20%. Flooring, another 20%. So this is the strategic approach which we take for our roof waterproofing, a combination of systems. You know, when we're talking about protection, we tend to generalize. We talk about waterproofing, we talk about flooring. What are the details? When you're constructing a roof deck, recently I was on a site in Shoreline, and the engineer had the challenge because he had to detail the deck to have a thermal insulation system. After the slab, they put a 50 mm thermal insulation in place, and then the screed was put on top of that, a reinforced screed. What happened? Separation, cracks. They were called in, please help us install waterproofing. And we said we needed to do an assessment. What is the cause of this separation? And then we had to give them a report that definitely water has been soaked into this deck, and then the thermal insulation has been saturated with water. This is embedded beneath a 75 mm reinforced screed. There's no escape. Automatically, there's pressure and there's stress on the structural members. Then it starts to give way by developing cracks. You know, we need to design and give a guide to our contractor for every level of the structure, from the foundation to the superstructure. Here is one of the, what's it called, sustainable solutions we have. Polyurethane waterproofing. This is a jointless system. You don't need to use the torches in the case of bitumen felt. This is liquid and cold applied and takes the entire deck for waterproofing. Next. These are other systems as well. Okay, so our booth is just a third by the left on your light. There's a lot we can talk about: thermal insulation systems, waterproofing, flooring, and the detailed step-by-step approach you should take so that the contractors can be well guided to design a structure that would not fail. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Fincrete Global, for your innovative presentation. Thank you. All right, we're moving. Quickly, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to do a little housekeeping, as architect Moniva will always say. Let me do a little bit of housekeeping. We are pleased to have in our midst the presence of the Dean, College of Postgraduate Studies, Caleb University, Professor Oladipo Dari Abel, FNIA. Caleb University, please, a round of applause for your Dean. So that they will not withhold your certificate. Understand? Also, we have in our midst the Dean, College of Environmental Science and Management, Caleb University as well, Professor Oluwole Alagbe, FNIA. Thank you so much for coming. We love you. We'll also be having a panel session by Architect Taiwo Ayepe, MNI. Please, if you have any questions, write them down, jot them down. In a matter of 15 minutes, we'll be having that panel session with the speakers. Also, ladies and gentlemen, we are celebrating 2 architects for this year's Laf 15.0. And I would like to recognize the presence of our other celebrity architect, Architect Biola Fayemi, FNIA. She's here with us. Please celebrate her. Thank you so much, Ma, for coming. Also, we have Architect Theo Lawson, FNIA. Thank you so much, too. We'll be taking one more product presentation, and then we'll go to the second speaker for today, ProBlind. Mr. Wasim will be doing the presentation. Please, a round of applause for ProBlind.
Hello, everyone. Good day, hello, and we would like to extend our appreciation of having us today as ProBlind, Chairman, Architect David, and NIA. Thank you so much. So, this is Wasim, interior architect at ProBlind, and here where the story started. As ProBlind, we have up to 9 business lines. We can start from the roller blinds as a window treatment, curtains, motor and controls, outdoor, upholstery fabrics, rugs, wallpaper, bed and bath, and decorative items. Before we start with business lines and categories, I would like to highlight on a fact, which is the energy from the buildings. So building energy consumption worldwide is coming from the industry, 28% from the industry. We have 32% from the transport and 40% from the building. If we take this 40% from the building and we go deep in it, we will see that 84 of this 40% is divided into several parts. The main 2 parts that we need to highlight on is the lighting and HV inside the building. And here, where the contribution of the blind and window treatment appears with the building. To extend more information about this subject, when we put blind in our house, definitely for a reason, not only for vision. Of course, we need privacy, but more than that, we need to reduce the sun. We need to make the AC at our house to be more efficient. And this is the main contribution of having our window treatment in our houses. So this is also the intersection and putting more highlights on putting windows, blinds, or any related to window treatment for the houses. We start with the roller blinds. The roller blind is a treatment that it can be consisted of 3 parts: the sunscreen, the blackout, and the decorative blinds. And as we can see, all the material is fire retardant under specification, where we focus more on specification for the material for a better usage at the houses. It's breathable, fire retardant, and antibacterial. It's also very important for commercial use and residential use as well. As we focus for houses, for end users, we also highlight on the specification of the blind for the commercial as the hospitals, hotels, and other offices spaces. If we reach for the curtain spaces, the curtain category is very wide and also have many of information and specification, where we also understand what the client need from the material that he want to put in his house. If he would like to put silk, pure cotton, pure linen, waterproof fabric, and antibacterial fabric as well. For the outdoor awning, the next slide, please. This is a solution for the outdoor spaces where we can also focus for putting solutions for the clients and commercial areas, and it can be motorized and manual as well in different subjects like the retractable awnings, zip lines, outdoor pergolas, and umbrellas, and other solutions. We reach now for the motors and controls, because it's very important now in the recent time that any manual blind or any manual curtain, now we can change it to a motorized, because this is now the time moving as automation. Any house now that is being sold, it's very, actually it's the best upgrade for a house to sell it with an automation system. It's not only for lighting, it's not only for sound system, but also for windows treatment as well. It's very good for the architects or the developers or even the end user himself to upgrade his house and link his blinds or window covering treatment for a motorized option, that he can also link it with the timing of the sun, for example, to time his blind to close or open on a specific time in the morning, and by the noon to open it again. We arrive to the upholstery fabric. Of course, we have a very wide range of upholstery material that contribute upon the needed of the client. For example, if we have an outdoor space, we focus on the water repellent or water resistant fabric for this outdoor space. So the fabric will last more longer than the indoor one. Even the antibacterial and stain resistant fabric is also very important as well for indoor spaces. We have the plain and decorative fabrics as well at our showrooms. Next slide, please. The rugs section, very wide collection of rugs section, from decorative rugs, wall-to-wall rugs, where we can cover the flooring with a wall-to-wall carpet like the hotels and the cinema rooms and specific areas as well for high traffic areas. But the most important thing that we also can focus on is the customized rug, where we can customize the rug based on the size of the client and design of the client. If he would like to bring any picture or any design of the rug and customize it for such space, we also can do it for him. Wallpaper and wall covering. Why to say wall covering and wallpaper? Because there is material and technical wise, there is a difference between both. The wallpaper is a printed paper that we can paste and apply on the wall. While the wall covering material, as we can see in this picture, it's made of a material, natural fiber, materials. It's made of glass, sand, silk, different type of threads that we can apply on our walls. Definitely, most of them are fire retardant and water repellent. Bed and bath section, we introduced this line of business not only for the end users, but also for the commercial spaces like hospitals and hotels. And the variety of the fabric thread and the designs that we have at our showroom as well is very wide and big. Next slide, please. The decorative items are the items that we can decorate the areas that we have with different types, different ideas that we can also assist you at our showroom in your areas, in your spaces. So we can beautify the place and match what you have already in your houses with what you have, what you can get as well from our side. Let me also introduce to you to some of our main project that we did. Microsoft at King's Tower. It was linked, the motorized blinds was linked on the automation system and the Crestron BMS solution.
Thank you. A round of applause for architect Taiwo Ayekwe.
Good afternoon, everybody. I thought I was going to have to elevate my voice because of the technical glitch, but luckily I wouldn't have to do that. I'll use the opportunity to, quickly call on the president of Royal Institute of British Architects, Muyiwa Oki, to come and assist us with some of our, please, Muyiwa, let's give him a round of applause, please. Thank you. So I would equally like to invite Mr. Shukwa Shashore, SAN, to come and receive a token from the chapter, from Muyiwa. So
you need to give a little bit of speech before we get
okay. So, sir, please, sir. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Olashukwu Shashore, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, for your historical lens, helping us to understand better our future through the lens of our past. I do agree with you that we should all promote collaboration internally and across industries, across verticals, so that we can all become more innovative. Like I did yesterday, I asked all architects and built environment professionals to challenge themselves, because a good justification for progressing the design should not only be about how it was done in the past, because strictly adhering to the status quo got us to where we are now. And if we do this, if we endeavor to do this, our greatest asset should be our collective imagination, just as you had shared today. And with this all, we can create a sustainable, resilient future, as was said already. So thank you so much for your kind words. Thank you so much for your insight. And we'd like to call on our chief host as well, Mr. David Majakotomi, as we present you this plaque. Thank you for your time. Oh, so Olashukpo Shashore, SAN, by the Nigerian Institute of Architects, Lagos chapter, a recognition and appreciation of your contribution as keynote speaker for the Lagos Architecture Forum 2024. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's give him a warm round of applause, please. So that was a fantastic presentation from Mr. Shashore. So we should encourage him with a round of applause, please. Thank you very much. He gave a very detailed presentation. So whilst he was, making his presentation, I took some notes on all of the things that he had said, and I'll run over these things briefly. Before I do that, I want to share some kind of insights. I come from Lagos Island, and I always wondered why, Lagos Island is the way it is today. So, with the presentation he's just made, he's giving us an insight into, having an understanding of what it looks like, what it used to be like, and what you and I can, do to make Lagos a better place. It's all about resilience and the rest. So Mr. Shashore, whilst he made his presentation, he talked about the historical context of Lagos. He gave us some insights, some images, and some explanation into, why we are where we are today, where we started from, and the plans that were made. He showed us some ferry terminals, he showed us some ferry wharfs, and what the Lagos Marina looked like in the past. He made us understand how erroneous we refer to some of the colonial people who had once ruled us in the past, how, Frederick Lugard should really be described as against how I was taught in primary school of who Frederick Lugard was. He made us understand and have better insight into resilience in Lagos. He told us about how the Lagos rail service in 1895 was, brought into place. He made us understand how in 1906 to 1913, how a mole, right, was built, for economic reasons in, to be advantageous to the Europeans who were in Africa, in Lagos at that time. In 1861, in 1861, he made us understand of how even in London, there was a lot of squalor. In 1863, he made us understand of how there was underground sewage in London, and how that underground sewage system was converted to the underground transport system some of us use today. In 1925, he explained how this was proposed in Lagos, Nigeria, and how it was refused. In 1891, he went back and made us understand that there was electricity in London. In 1902, he made us understand how we had street lights in Lagos and how that could have possibly developed us faster into where we may have been and where we are today. Right? He then related these things to malaria, right? And the European reserved areas and how we have erroneously continued that reserved areas into our government residential areas today. He then pinpointed the need for us to obliterate these old ideas or practices. He told us about how the 6 weeks leave that a number of establishments today use and how it came to be. I'll be very quick with the summary now. He told us about how, as politicians or leaders today, how we need to shed ourselves from the ideas of having police orderlies and what they really did in the past, right? And how we need to be able to get out of that thought process. These police orderlies, he made us understand, they were supposed to interpret to their principals the languages that they didn't understand and protect them from our forefathers. So these are issues that we really need to, understand. In 1908, Mr. Shukwa told us how oil was discovered in Nigeria and how 2,000 barrels of oil, right, was produced in Lagos. So there are other, information that he made us understand. But I mean, after a while, when we have to communicate, we'll get information on this. So I would like to invite Muniba for us to continue the program.
Thank you very much, sir. It is still the Lagos Architects Forum 2024, Lab 15.0. Very quickly, we're going to move on to our next speaker for today in the person of Dr. Folayinka Dania. She's the Chief Resilience Officer for Lagos State and the Chief Executive Officer of the Lagos State Resilience Office. She coordinates the implementation of the Lagos Resilience Strategy and other resilience building initiatives in collaboration with the state government ministries, departments, and agencies with the overall goal of ensuring that the state continues to thrive, adapt, and grow sustainably. Could you please put your hands together and warmly welcome Dr. Folayinka Dania. You're welcome, man.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Are we still in the room? Can you show me your hands if you're still in the room? Thank you very much. So my name is Dr. Folayinka Dania. I'm the Chief Resilience Officer and CEO of the Lagos State Resilience Office. And today I'll be talking to you about climate action in Lagos. I know Mr. Shukwa is a very tough speaker to follow. So you will bear with me if I don't entertain you as much. Thank you very much. Next slide. Okay, it looks different. So, as we say in Lagos, if you are from Lagos, we don't say welcome to Lagos. We say this is Lagos. No welcome to Lagos. So as we know, and why do we say this? Please clap for us now, those of us that are from Lagos. Thank you very much. Please don't be jealous if you are not from Lagos. And we know this is because Lagos is the economic capital of Nigeria. We're a major hub and one of the fastest growing cities in the world. We're an economic melting point. Everybody believes that you can make it in Lagos. Am I correct or am I correct? Thank you very much. So just like Mr. Shukwa said, we're a small landmass, we know, 3,557 square kilometers, and about 40% of this landmass area is water. We're home to 26 million people, depending on who you ask. And because of our nature along the coast, as in we have 180 kilometer shoreline, People say elevation of 2 meters above sea level. In fact, you even find some documents that will tell you that 38 meters below and 78 meters above, depending on who you ask. And water bodies account for more than 40% of this landmass. We have a GDP of 41 trillion naira. And so on its own, if Lagos State was a country, it will rank the 7th largest economy in Africa and is responsible for over 20% of Nigeria's GDP. Please clap for Lagos. However, because of this nature as an economic melting pot and people coming into Lagos for one opportunity or the other, it has resulted in a lot of urban sprawls, reclamation of wetlands, and other natural settlements for settlements, resulting in severe stress on the city's infrastructure, basic service provision, growing greenhouse gas emissions, and the likes. And because Lagos is also expensive, we now find that a large number of people, a large number of residents of Lagos live in slums and informal settlements, which render them highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. We're talking flooding, sea level rise, and extreme heat. And I'm sure we're all aware that of the various past flooding events that have led to the displacement of thousands and loss of lives and property. Next slide, please. So before I go on, I want to take us through some key definitions, as in that I'll be using in the course of the presentation, or you've heard over time, which is in line with the theme, which is on Lagos, resilience, and adaptation. Am I correct? Please, what's the theme of the event? I will ask you because I know people are tired. That's why I'm asking questions. I know it's not a classroom. Please, what's the theme? Thank you very much. So what do we mean by resilience? As in, for us, resilience is defined as a capacity of individuals, communities, institutions, businesses, and systems, in this case, within Lagos, to survive, adapt, and grow, despite any acute shock or chronic stress that Lagos experiences. So no matter the shock, no matter the stress, we must survive, we must adapt and grow for us to be able to say that we are resilient. And then when you also look at climate change, as in the first question will be, what is climate? What is a climate? It basically refers to the long-term global average of your temperature, humidity, rainfall patterns over seasons, years, or decades. Next slide. Okay. No, previous slide, please. I didn't know it had changed. So when we talk about climate change, we're basically referring to a significant shift in this average temperature and weather patterns. Are we warmer than we were before? Are we drier than we were before? Are we wetter than we were before? And then when we now talk about how do we address issues of climate change, you'll hear terms like climate change adaptation, climate change mitigation. What do this mean? Climate change adaptation basically refers to actions that prepare us for or adjust to the current and projected impacts of climate change. The truth of the matter is that the change is already here. Whether you like it or not, it is here. So the best we can do if we want to be resilient and ensure that we are here in the long run is to adapt to it. So what are the actions? What are the things that we need to put in place to ensure that the impacts don't decimate us? Those are the things that we refer to as climate change adaptation initiatives or strategies. Whereas climate change mitigation are actions that help us avoid or reduce the emission of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere to prevent more global warming. Let me explain. So we have these gases that we call greenhouse gases. And I'm taking you through this because I don't know if any of the previous speakers have talked to you about this. Because a lot of people say climate change, but they're not really sure what it means. So we have this, let me use ourselves as human beings. So you breathe in carbon, you breathe in oxygen, and you breathe out carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is almost a greenhouse gas emission. It's a greenhouse gas rather. So what it does is it goes into the atmosphere, it stays there, it traps heat, it heats the earth up. There is some warming. Because of that warming, you start seeing things like the ice glaciers that are in parts of the world start melting. So the water is already in the ocean. You have additional water there. You have incidents around sea level rise. It is very hot. the whole air is hot, the buildings absorb the heat, the temperatures change and the likes. So that one brings about the heat. Then you now have the heat going up into the air, and then the clouds are absorb all this. And before you know what is happening, you're looking for how do we cool this earth? How do we cool this earth? And the next thing you have is extreme rainfall. Are we together? So that's just a simple way, a layman's term of looking at climate change. Next slide. So we talked about being resilient to shocks and stresses. What do we mean by shocks? This can be natural or man-made events that threaten a state or a city like Lagos, leading to major loss of life, damage to assets, and the city's ability to function. A lot of times we don't know when they will happen, but when they happen, they usually have catastrophic events, consequences. So we have things like building collapse, which we are very familiar or conversant about in the built environment, coastal erosion, urban fires, flooding. As in, these are a few examples of what they are. When they happen, their effects or their impacts are usually very serious. Next slide. So when we refer to stresses, as in they are chronic natural or man-made events also that render the city less able to function. A lot of times they are with us every day and they weaken the fabric of a city on a day-to-day basis. We don't like them, but they are with us. Next slide, sorry. Traffic congestion. Who likes traffic? Erratic power supply, overcrowding, inadequate physical and social infrastructure. These are things that are not in the best circumstances, but they are with us every day and we need to survive, adapt, and thrive despite them. So this is a list of the top shocks and stresses that we experience or could experience in Lagos State. Coastal erosion, rainfall, flooding, storms, disease outbreak, economic downturn, am I correct? Recession, erratic power supply, overpopulation, inadequate public transportation, inadequate healthcare system, and the likes. There's something here that people ask about, formal, informal economic contestation. Everybody here is a water service provider, am I correct? Everybody here is a NEPA official, am I correct? As in, so somehow it's difficult for us to ascertain where does the formal sector end in Lagos and where does the informal sector begin. And that's what we refer to as a formal, informal economic contestation, unemployment and the likes. But what we are saying is that despite these shocks and stresses, we must survive, adapt, and grow, because that's what makes us resilient. So looking at these shocks and stresses, you see that a number of them that are related to the climate change, coastal erosion, rainfall, flooding, even your building collapse is becoming impacted also by climate change. I mean, what's the average weather temperature for Lagos now? It used to be about 26.7 degrees. That was the average, but now we are seeing days that are hitting 33 degrees centigrade, 35 sometimes. Thank you. So we're saying that irrespective of climate change, irrespective of shocks and stresses, how do we ensure that we put in interventions in place as in that address these things in a resilient manner? Next slide. So there's something we called the resilience lens. And it's something we all need to apply to whatever projects or programs it is that we are implementing, because that is what helps us build resilience. And there are 7 of them. So we need to approach the challenge in an integrated and holistic way that crosses silos. So there's nothing like I am the master, I am the pillar of knowledge. Everybody that has a role to play in whatever project you are implementing needs to be at the table. We need to consider what are the shocks and stresses that impact what it is that we are trying to implement, and what are the shocks and stresses that what we are implementing, what kind of shocks and stresses will it actually bring up? So we're saying we need to implement things through a broad risk and hazard assessment. So we need to know what can go wrong and how they can. Our projects need to aim for short, medium, and long-term benefits. We need to aim for equitable outcomes, whether you are poor, you are rich, you live in Victoria Island, or you live in Ibejuleki. And then we need to now leverage actions across a broad group of stakeholders, because sometimes the resources that you require might not be in your own sector. We heard earlier people talking about heating, ventilation, and cooling systems. They are not architects. We saw people talking about concrete floors. They are not architects, but everybody has a role to play to ensure that the built environment is resilient. And whatever it is that we are planning, we need to consider the cross-jurisdictional implications of whatever it is that we are planning. It sounds simple. I'll give you an example. Years ago, Lagos State wanted to be forward-thinking and decided to start the Enron project. And we wanted to generate our power. What did government tell us eventually? It is not your responsibility. So even though it was a good idea, at that time, we did not have the legal backing to be able to implement this. So those are kind of things that you need to think about. And most importantly, you need to consider the performance of what it is that you are implementing or planning to implement across what we call 7 qualities of resilience. 1, reflective. And that was what Mr. Shashare spoke about. You need to consider the past. What worked? Why did it work? What didn't work? Why didn't it work? Because it's only a fool that will do the same thing the same way and expect a different result. You need to plan well and understand what it is that you are planning for in such a way that it is robust enough that you even know how it will fail. And you have plans in place for the failures when they happen. We need to be resourceful so that we understand that resources might be limited, but there are multiple ways to even use the resources that we'll have. And there's no point doing one thing and expecting just one benefit. You must put your resources in a way, use your resources in a way that it has multiple benefits. Redundancy is another resilient quality. I know when people think of redundancy, they think of something that isn't working again. But we're saying we need to put in place spare capacity for whatever it is that we are proposing. I'll give you an example that everybody relates with. How many people have generators in their houses? So when PHCN is behaving itself and the discos have electricity, what happens to your generator? It is what? It is redundant. But immediately power goes out, that generator starts working. That generator is redundant infrastructure, and everybody needs to ensure that in whatever plans you are implementing, whatever projects, you must have spare capacity in place. Flexibility is another resilient quality. You need to understand that your plans might not go the way you made them. So things might not work out the way you planned. So what are the alternative strategies that you can put in place to ensure that what it is that you are implementing gets done? Inclusion. Everybody that needs to be at the table for that discussion must be there. We don't plan projects for people, we plan with people. And last but not the least is integration, which I mentioned earlier. So 7 resilience qualities. If you don't remember anything about resilience, please remember those. Because without that, you cannot say in any way that you are implementing anything, whether a project, a plan, a program that is resilient. So let's come back to climate change. So we mentioned where Lagos is located along the coast, as in this contributes to its vulnerability as into climate change impact. So the location along the coast, the low-lying topography, and the high table water. And it makes us particularly vulnerable to 3 main climatic impacts drivers, as I mentioned earlier: sea level rise, extreme rates, and extreme rainfall. Due to the sea level rise, you see hazards such as coastal flooding, lagoon flooding. I'm sure Mr. Majekodumi yesterday would have spoken to you about coastal erosion and what is happening along the Bejuleki axis. Extreme heat brings with it its own hazards: heat waves, urban heat island effect, and pollution. Please let me stop here. Urban heat island effect. We are architects. This one we can address. So with urban heat island effect, it's basically heat that happens in built up areas. So you'll find that some people say, why is Lagos hotter than some places? It's because of the buildings. So when you have impermeable surfaces, whether it's your roofs, whether it's your walls, it heats up during the day, it absorbs heat. At night, it slowly releases the heat. And that's why people will say, I'm hot at night. Why is it so hot despite outside being cool? This is because your walls have absorbed heat. So in our design spaces, as we need to think about what are the materials that we can use to prevent this urban heat island effect. And I'll talk about it more later. There's pollution that comes from the landfills and all that, as in when the heat comes down. And with extreme rainfall, you have inland flooding, river flooding, erosions, whether it's sheet or gully, and the tropical storms. In fact, the sea level rise can be so bad that in some places, there's a potential that we might have up to sea level of up to 3 meters sea level rise. And this could permanently impact some places in Lagos with 1.5 meters of flooding permanently if we do nothing. So we've done some assessments as a state to say, if we do nothing at this point in time, and we allow everything to just continue as it is, if we don't put any interventions in place, what are the things that will happen? As in, I mean, just like Mr. Ashuko said earlier, some things were there then, and they are no longer there now. It doesn't matter. We just built something else, but not necessarily something that is resilient. We've done the assessments, and by 2050, the cost of inaction for us in Lagos will be between 33 billion and 39 billion dollars worth of damage. It might not sound a lot, but let me break it down. In 2021, that would have been 12 times the budget of Lagos State. 12 times the budget of Lagos State. If we do nothing, in addition to what we have now, we'll now have additional 165 square kilometers of land inundated by water in Lagos State. Some people will say that is small. It's just 5%. But guess what? It is not localized. It's spread across 14 of 20 local governments in Lagos, if we use the local government divisions. So almost nobody will be spared. We would have over 1.4 million people that will be affected across LGs, more than 350,000 of which will be women. When things happen in Lagos and we start making noise, can we look back to see how many people were impacted? I don't think there's anything that's happened in Lagos that affected 100,000 people. Am I correct? We'll now have 1.4 million people. Where will we put them? We'll have to relocate them at a cost of over $6 billion. Over 7,000 critical infrastructure will be affected. This will cost us about $5 billion to replace. 11% of our transportation network will go, 12% of our power grids, 13% of our communication networks based on current modeling. Not only that, people will die. Heat-related deaths, as in from our calculations, over 20,000 people will die, more than 30% of which will be children. Our health facilities, over 400 of them will be inundated by water. They will go. Education centers, more than 500 of them will go away. So these impacts are physical, social, and economic if we actually do nothing, just so that you understand the magnitude of the problem. And these are not all the problems. These are just a few. But in Lagos State, we are not sitting down and folding our arms as in expecting things to just work out for us. We are planning. And we have a number of plans as in that actually help us address climate change because the impacts are not localized to one sector as it currently stands. So one document that I'm particularly proud of is the Lagos Resilience Strategy. We're the only state that has one. So it's Nigeria's first and only urban resilience strategy currently. Can we clap for Lagos State? And this strategy document envisions Lagos as an innovative, inclusive, and prosperous city that leverages the appropriate governance and infrastructure mechanisms to enable its people thrive, adapt, and grow sustainably. It has 3 pillars. It looks at Lagos as an efficient city. That's a city that provides the critical infrastructure that it needs for residents today and in the future. Why is the future important? It is estimated that by 2100, we will be between 80 and 100 million people in this same Lagos. This same landmass that we're talking about. Yes. So if you think that Lagos is populated, we have not yet started. It looks at Lagos as an enterprise city. That is the Lagos that harnesses this population that we're talking about to build a thriving and adaptive economy. And it also looks at Lagos as an inclusive city, which is a Lagos that seeks the safety, dignity, and well-being of all Lagos residents, including the poor and the vulnerable. And it has goals around, it has 10 goals around transportation, water and sanitation, clean energy, land use planning, innovation and development, tourism, education and youth empowerment, community participation, disaster management, and health. Another document that we're particularly proud of in Lagos is the Lagos Climate Action Plan, which helps us to identify what are our main sources of greenhouse gas emissions, which are transportation, waste management, stationary energy. So this our energy that we're talking about again is a big problem for us because that contributes about 55% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So your generators, all the fossil fuels that are used to generate electricity. And it also outlines mitigation and adaptation strategies for Lagos. And then the last document I'll be mentioning now is the Lagos State Development Plan 2052, which is a 30-year development plan that looks at positioning Lagos as Africa's model megacity, a global economic and financial hub that is safe, secure, functional, and productive. These documents are all available online. So you can look through the documents to see the initiatives that are there. But what we have done also as a state is gone beyond looking just these single documents. And we have looked through all the documents and we're beginning to build something called the Lagos State Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan, as in which puts together interventions, as in from all these documents that we need to prioritize to put Lagos on a pathway to resilience. And these initiatives have been divided into 3 broad categories. One is around building resilience infrastructure and public spaces. Please, do architects have a role to play in this? Yes. So we need to begin to design solutions that reduce exposure of our key infrastructure to climate change, whether it's our transportation, our power grids, our plants, our homes, and build a climate-proof city. It starts with you, architects. The second set of interventions we believe are interventions that help us to ensure resilient communities and protect vulnerable groups, to ensure that their exposure to climate change events are actually reduced. And the last set of initiatives are around anticipating risk and improving our response when crises do occur. So those ones look at decision-making, laws, policies, and the capacity to efficiently and promptly respond to climate risk disasters. So I'll take you through a few of the projects. And what I want you to do is to identify as architects which ones you have a role to play in designing. One, as simple as it sounds, is planting of trees. We say we need to build about 50,000 climate resilient trees. We're not just going to have a forest and build them. It needs to come from the design spaces. What are we designing? How do we ensure that the client plants a tree? It comes from the designs of the buildings. We need to rehabilitate our landfills, we know, so that it can trap more gases. We need to construct more waste to energy plants. We need to construct waste to energy plants and construct sewage treatment plants, which was what Mr. Sashashere was referring to in his previous presentation. Commercial rainwater harvesting. We need to flood-proof our critical highways to ensure that when rain falls, we are talking about potholes when rain flows. We are saying beyond that, what of the heat, the rain, and the perennial floods that might happen? How are they protected from that? Well, there are initiatives around early warning systems, as in so that we know when there'll be imminent weather events. Next slide. Building of flood-resistant housing complexes. Please, how many of the houses we are building now are flood-resistant? We see people now say, when you want to go and search for a house that you want to rent, that you should go there during rainy season. But now we are saying, before the houses are built, we need to begin to think about how do we protect those houses from the floods that would happen. Remember I said, if we do nothing, we might have floods that might go as high as 1.5 meters, some as high as 2.5 meters. What are we doing? Even our business facilities, whether it's aqua farming, we need to start thinking about how do we protect them. As a state, of course, construction and rehabilitation of drains. And one initiative I want to point out, this retrofitting of buildings with school surfaces, green building envelopes, and cool systems. Architects, you have to help us. These building envelopes that we're talking about, you call them skins, shells, as in everything that protects the internal part of the building from the external environment. We need to start thinking about how we can use them to improve air quality, reduce pollution, minimize the urban heat island effects that I was talking about. In some places, you now have vertical meadowing, scaffolding outside where you plant trees and it covers the buildings. You have roof gardens. As we need to start thinking about some of those designs and how they can help us as a state or globally, because whether we like it or not, at the end of the day, we are not the only ones contributing, but we are the ones that will feel the impact the most when it happens. Restoration of our natural wave barriers, and of course, reinforcement of our coastal embankments and building additional seawalls, which is in line with what Mr. Shashare mentioned earlier on why we had to put in place a co-Atlantic city, because we didn't have a choice of doing nothing. Next slide. So I talk about all these things and I talk about it as if we are ready for it. So far, we have identified over 30 adaptation and resilience projects to be implemented. Preliminary estimates have shown us it will cost us over $9 billion to implement some of the things we've identified. Only 33 or thereabouts. Imagine many more that we need to do. Everybody has a role to play. But we cannot say because we don't have enough money, we're not going to implement those things. So as a state, we're looking at different financing models that can help us assess many financing options. Stakeholder engagements and other things that we're continuing to do because we know that we have inadequate stakeholder buy-in. Some people don't even believe there's anything called climate change. Am I correct? We've also realized that as a state, as in we are not, our centralized coordination is not as adequate as it should be. So we are putting in place better governance structures as in for our climate policies. And last but not the least, as in one of the things that we've also identified from us, of course, there are a number of challenges, and I'm not going to talk through all of them, is that we need to also improve our own climate policies as a state. So we are improving that currently, whether it's around water quality, sanitation and hygiene, waste management and circularity, climate resilient building codes. So we are saying that instead of just leaving it to architects to design, we're saying it needs to come into the building codes themselves, and so that we'll be forced to comply as a state. Next slide. So the question is, what do architects do? You're responsible for the creation of designs and new construction, for new construction projects, alterations, redevelopment of existing projects. Use your specialist construction knowledge. I'm praising you now, and high-level drawing skills to design buildings that are safe, functional, sustainable, and aesthetically pleasing. You are responsible for gathering information and liaising with construction professionals about the feasibility of potential projects. Am I correct? So you must understand the concepts of climate change. You must understand what the climate impact drivers are. And you must understand what the various climate change impacts are and ensure that the new designs you create and the existing ones that you adjust are resilient to current and future climate change hazards. Thank you very much.
You can do better. You can do better. Thank you so much, Dr. Folayinka Dania, Lagos State Chief Resilience Officer, for that wonderful presentation. You've taught us a lot. a lot we don't even know about Lagos State. And I believe it's an eye-opener for everybody present here today. You know, thank you for the first-hand information about Lagos State. And also thank you for reminding us as architects about our roles. I'll just give the chairman of today's session, Architect Taiwo Ayekpe, MNIA, 2 minutes to come, recap what our Dr. Folayinka said. Please, a round of applause for my architect.
Thank you very much, everybody. Once again, in 2 minutes, we'll be very quick. So Dr. Dania, the chief resident surveyor in Lagos State, luckily I happened to work with her in the civil service, had made us understand about climate change and climate action. She has made us understand that Lagos, of course, like we know, is the economic capital of the state. She told us about certain details, data that we have on the state. She defined certain terms that we have almost always misunderstood. She told us about resilience and shock and stress and the importance of these terms, why we should have understanding of these terms. She then told us about the resilience lens, 7 qualities of resilience that we should understand, that we should begin to adapt and work around. She talked about climate risk, vulnerability, and certain points. Then we got insight into existing plans that the state had come up with. You know, we have the Lagos Resilience Strategy. Luckily, I have that and I work with that. We have the Lagos Climate Action, and then we have Lagos Development Plan 2052. Then we have interventions by the state. We have things that spoke with resilient infrastructure, resilient communities, and how we should anticipate risk. Dr. Daniel's presentation was a bit scary, but it was an eye-opener. As architects, we should have better understanding on these things and how we can begin to think around these things. When we can think around them, we understand them. When we can understand them, then we can then begin to propose for our clients, the end users. By that, then we can have a better environment. Then she told us about adaptation and resilience projects and challenges to the implementation of these plans. And then she gave us a descriptive explanation of what you and I as architects can do. She told us about our roles as architects and how we can think around these things to make Lagos, Nigeria, and the world a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, my architect, Taiwo Ayekpe, for that wonderful recap. Quickly, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be going to our product presentation before we have the last speaker for today. Nigeria Liquefied Petroleum Gas Association, NLPGA. The time is now for your product presentation. Nigeria Liquefied Petroleum Gas Association.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And my name is Femi Fanoiki, and I'm here in the capacity as the chairman of the Safety and Technical Committee of the Nigerian Liquefied Petroleum Gas Industry. And I'm here with a few of my friends, members of our association, to reintroduce you to a product that you're always around, but perhaps you don't know how, you don't know the efficacy of it. Okay, next slide. So what is this? No, back. Liquefied petroleum gas. We call it exceptional energy. Yes, it's exceptional energy because you can do more than a few things with this same gas. You can, within the context of the built environment, you can use LPG for air conditioning, power generation, cooking, which is the predominant application in our environment. Yeah, okay. So he went past my slide a little bit. I'm just gonna have a quick word about some of the many things you can do with gas that you're perhaps not familiar with or perhaps anxious to utilize. Now, the first thing about LPG is in Nigeria, it's typically called cooking gas. Yes, but as an industry, we refrain from using that term because it obviously limits the use of the product, which I've demonstrated to you is got a wide variety of uses, including cooking, power, auto gas, many things that even talk about what Dr. Daniel talked about, energy and useful energy. Yeah, so LPG is a utility in terms of the building space that should be considered in the same manner that water is considered, power is considered, and it should be considered in this way to make it a seamless utility for modern living and modern building projects. So what ties it first together is reticulation. Yes, you need a base infrastructure with which to distribute gas through your development. Can you go to the next slide, please? Oh, it's out of sequence. Okay, next slide. So when we talk about reticulation, we're typically talking about central gas systems. Yes, it is not unusual in Lagos to see the most beautiful apartment building. As you drive by, you can see the beautiful different colors of gas cylinders littered on the balcony. And you're just like, ah, that could have been done better, right? So what we can do is offer centralized gas systems. And this gas systems can work in residential spaces. So you have apartment buildings, verticals. You can utilize it in horizontal developments, estates, and of course in commercial development, such as shopping malls. So anywhere where a bunch of people, multi-users are gathered, you can distribute gas to them seamlessly. Now, the technology is there, the competence is there. And if you go down, a couple of our friends that I brought along, LGV Gas and Link City Gas, are leading experts in this and can answer a lot of questions for you. In the Nigerian home today, the next best thing aside from cooking that we can do is water heating. Yeah. Now, water heating becomes a very interesting conversation now that electricity is becoming more at everybody's mind. So everybody wants to know, hey, so what band do you live in? Do you live in Band A? Okay. I don't live in Band A, so I'm good. But we offer gas-fired water heaters. Yes. These gas water heaters can be used in residential developments. Yes. So the image on the right is a single unit. And a single unit like that, depending on the rating, can serve as much as 5, 6 bedroom apartments. Yeah. So it's rated per the water that runs through it. In this case, it's a 26 liter per minute water heater. The image on the left is actually a live image from, well, I'll give them a plug. It's one of the nicer hotels in Lagos, the Delbro Hotel. So at the Delbro Hotel, Gas Tech Energy member just installed this compact water heating system for the for the 50-room hotel unit. So it's a very compact unit, and it gets all the benefits of gas water heaters. And some of those benefits include the instantaneous hot water that's generated. Yeah, and more than the instantaneous hot water, the unlimited hot water that you can generate. So it's not like your storage system where you run out of hot water 5 minutes into your shower. Yeah, like I said, it's available for residential application. It's available for commercial application. And you can see the comparison of electricity use. Yeah, for a unit that serves a 6-bedroom home, for example, the total electricity demand is 45 watts. Yeah, 45 watts, less than a light bulb. Yes, compare that to your typical geysers in the bedroom. 5 of them would be about 6,000 to 7,500 watts. And then the generator to support all that as well. Go ahead. Yes, air conditioning. Somebody mentioned earlier that 40% of the energy load, I forget the statistic he rolled out, but the point was a lot of the energy draw in buildings is centered around water heating and space cooling. So I'm sure a lot of the practicing professionals here are familiar with VRF systems and electric heat pumps, yes, but you can also have the gas variety, yes, and in using the gas variety, your biggest impact is the reduction of electrical demand. You can cut out as much as 85% of electric demand from a big project such as this building, for example. You can take all your wiring down from 3-phase wiring to single-phase wiring, yes, because you're drawing such little electricity. A member, Link City Gas, is a representative of a major provider of this air conditioning, and you can speak with them later on. The next thing you can do with LPG in your building developments, in your homes, is power generation. We all have, everybody's familiar with the ever-present generator in your home. Yes, today diesel costs 1,100 to 1,200 naira a liter. Yes, but you can run your generators on gas. Yes, when you run your generator on gas, a dedicated gas engine, you would be saving as much as 50% on diesel operations, right? Now, while there are people who are already sunk in and cannot afford to buy a new gas generator, we actually have an option where we can dualize your existing your existing diesel generator. So it will be a concept called dual fueling. It will run both on gas and diesel concurrently. The net effect, and what's important to most people, is bottom line. You would save about 30% on your fueling cost in this regard. Now, that's just another image of dual fueling system. So our members, Link City and LGV Gas, are proponents of this, and you can have that conversation down the line. In terms of reliability, just to talk about power generation, it's interesting to note for people who will not know, but we run about 800 telecom tower sites on gas generators today. So in an industry where success starts at 99.3%, we're able to work and serve them satisfactorily. So the reliability is there. Now, finally, what you will hear sometimes is, oh, how safe is gas? Oh, is it going to, yes. We all know those repetitions. Unfortunately, a lot of it is not quite accurate. Yeah, LPG is a very safe fuel. It's been domesticated for over 100 years. But in addition to its relative safety, you can take preemptive action by having other devices to help you counter issues like that. So leak detectors, single space leak detectors, leak detection systems that are tied into shutdown, remote shutdown monitoring, things that can be tied into your BMSs right now. So you can take even more proactive action. Now, we have one of our members, CCOM Technologies, in the house. You can speak to them about all the safety gadgets or precautions you can take within your building space. Okay. I think there's one more last slide. Okay. And just to tie it all together, the NLPGA. The NLPGA is the umbrella body that's a stakeholder that's an advocate for all the stakeholders. So in terms of collaborating with the built industry, with the built space, we provide knowledge sharing courses in which you can take in designing and implementing reticulation systems so that architects will be a little bit more comfortable specifying these technologies to clients and educating them. So please reach out to NLPGA. They're downstairs as well. Thank you so very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Femi Fanoiki from NLPGA. Very quickly, a little bit of recognitions before we go on, because we would like to recognize some of the fellows who walked in while we were having presentations. Architect Wumi Agbaje, FNIA. You're welcome, sir. Would also like to recognize Architect Pat Okonta, FNIA. You're welcome, ma'am. Oh, last year she was one of our celebrity architects. You're welcome, ma'am. We would also like to welcome and recognize Architect Bisi Olumide, FNIA. I saw her around earlier. Okay, all right then. We would also like to recognize the chair of Ikorodu branch, Architect Bolahan Kukoyi. I saw him as well. Okay, all right. So we'll just take a brief conversation and comments. We'd like to invite the President, RIBA, Architect Muya Oki, to give a summary on Dr. Folayinka Dania's presentation, and then we would do a short presentation to her, along with the chairman of session, Architect Taiwo Ayekwe. A round of applause, please.
Say something. Yeah, okay. Well, Dr. Dania, Chief Resilience Officer, the first of your kind in Nigeria. You've been a trailblazer. Thank you so much for your robust presentation, shocking us into the future if we do nothing. So I'm glad that you have been here to share your resilient plan and a pathway to net zero and beyond towards Lagos mega city for 2050. And we have a plaque. Do we have a plaque? Yeah, the plaque is coming up. Before the plaque comes up, I just want to remind you that, like you said, we should get architects on board. Architects are the planners, the designers of the future, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be around to connect with us and ensure that they can share, they can have a relationship with you in your office so that we share our ideas fruitfully. So this is an appreciation award. We would like to thank you, Dr. Folayinka Dania, from the Nigerian Institute of British Nigerian Institute of Architects, Lagos chapter, in recognition and appreciation for your contribution as speaker today. And we hope we can have a fruitful conversation and fruitful relationship with you in the future. Thank you so much. Oh, that way. Hold on to it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you. So.
We had gone over, please come. We had gone over summaries on what Dr. Dania had presented earlier. So there will be no need for us to summarize this presentation anymore. This may be a...
Okay, it is still the Lagos Architects Forum 2024, Lab 15.0. The conversation is still Lagos. And we will be taking our next speaker, CSF Olushoka Abayomi. Born in Lagos, studied architecture at the University of Lagos. He had several working experience in architectural firms, including New Culture Studio at Idumuji, Ugboko, Delta State with Demas Moko, as well as an architecture journalist for Next Newspapers and Castles Weekly. Olusoga was recruited as part of the first squad of university graduate cadets by the Federal Fire Service in 2011. After basic firefighting training, he was selected for advanced courses at the Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas, United States, and the National Fire Academy in Sheda, Abuja. As a pioneer member of the Plan Review and Approval Unit, now Plans Examination Division, set up in 2012 at the Abuja headquarters, he was involved in research which culminated into the National Fire Safety Code of 2013. He has also worked as a frontline firefighter in Lagos, leading and participating in over 500 inspections of various occupancies within the city. He became the head of the Office of Special Duties at the Lagos Command and has headed the Plans Examinations Division, Southwest Zone F, since 2022. Currently, he is on the rank of Chief Superintendent of Fire. Olusoga Abayomi is a member of the Institute of Fire Engineers in the United Kingdom and the Nigerian Institute of Architects. Please join me to welcome and give a warm round of applause for CSF Olusoga Abayomi.
Thank you very much for that, introduction. First and foremost, I believe we need to commend the current management of the Nigerian Institute of Architects, Lagos chapter especially, for two major reasons. The first reason is that they've been able to maintain a standard and build on it. I work in a regulatory body, and I can assure you that maintaining standards in Nigeria is a very, very challenging exercise. So they've maintained the standard of the Lagos Architects Forum, and they've kept on building on it over the years. So thank you very much for that. Yeah. Yes, they deserve more than a round of applause, actually. The second reason is I was discussing with my sister-in-law, and she wrote a book, and she was complaining, that generic complaint that Nigerians don't have a reading culture. And I said, no, the problem is much deeper than that. We are not, if the funds are right, you might be very shocked at just how much reading Nigerians can do, engage in, if they have any monetary reward waiting for them after the exercise. But then I said the problem is that we are not very good at the simple exercise of stopping to think. Ever once in a while, you just stop and think, where are we coming from? How did we get here? Where are we going? It's possible for us to be moving forward in the wrong direction, depending on whether our destination has changed or it has remained the same. It's possible for us to be going backwards in the right direction. It's a country where we have this challenge of, maybe regular power supply, and we have been battling it year in, year out for over 60 years. Regular water supply, the same challenge. And we note that, yes, we do have problem, stopping to think. Where are we going? Are we going in the right direction? You might be going in the right, to your right, in the wrong direction. You might be going to your left in the right direction. But you will not know that unless you stop to think. So avenues like this, which they provide us, they give us this chance to stop and think and recharge our batteries. Then we can go back and, be much better persons. I'm talking on Lagos resilience and climate change adaptation, the fire architecture story. First of all, we have to contextualize Lagos. Lagos is a coastal city. In fact, if you want to understand the impact of the coast on Lagos, the term Lagos, that appellation, Lagos, actually came from the Portuguese. So Lagos is impacted by the coast, and coastal cities generally around the world are dominant. They are hotbeds of innovation. We look at places like Rome, like Tokyo, like London, like New York. Yes. We look at ancient Rome for starters. Ancient Rome, you have to give them the credit. If I meet any one of the Caesars, I would salute him, not just because he's a senior officer, but they were good. They designed bridges and roads, live and dead loads, 2,000 years in advance. Can you imagine? How did they think that up? At that time, their drainage system was much more efficient than that of modern day Lagos. You have to give them the credit for that. Also, very importantly, the infamous Emperor Nero. Some will argue that the fire services have been dogged by controversy from inception. Exactly how it started in 64 CE, whether he was the one who started the fire, that fire services actually came from an arsonist, we are not sure. But the historians say it came from Emperor Nero, that he set fire to Rome and used that as an excuse to, persecute Christians. On the other hand, he comes up with the innovation of having firefighters and also, coming up with fire codes, which, well, didn't survive, but it was a start. Okay. Then we go to Tokyo, for instance. Tokyo, nowadays, there's something called the Pritzker Prize in Architecture. Okay. And have you noticed that the Japanese seem to have the dominance? Okay. Of course, there was Kenzo Tange, who I believe designed Abuja some years ago, many years ago. But recently, they've just seized control. Almost every other year, it goes to one Japanese or the other. If it is not Toyohito, it is one of his proteges, Kazuyo Sejima. You have Tandao Ando. You have Arata Izozaki. You have Shigeru Ban, even characters like Junya Ishigami, he presents at the Serpentine Gallery, which is usually a stepping stone to the Pritzker. Why? How come they have that sort of dominance? Could it be because they have the oldest sustained fire codes in the world at the moment, dating back to 1629? It's possible. So we have to look at that possibility too. They also have, of course, the largest municipal fire department in the world, in Tokyo, 18,000 strong. That's a lot for one city. So we come back to Lagos. Lagos, of course, is a resilient city. It has gone through a lot of change. It has gone through political change, status change. When we were growing up, Lagos was both an economic and political capital. Okay? So the seat of government was here. Of course, the government had been, as federal systems tend to go, you need a lot of patience with them. They had been planning to move to a place called Abuja. The catalyst, the accelerant, as firefighters will say, was a military coup, April 22nd, 1990. Okay. April 22nd, 1990, we had a military coup. The then head of state was staying at Obala there, Dodam Barracks. He decides to leave after that, goes to a place that is now known as Aso Rock Villa. So, and little by little, all the government agencies started changing their headquarters from Lagos to Abuja. But Lagos still survived and thrived as an economic capital. To put it in perspective, there was a time period in humanity when the richest Black man in terms of declared assets and the richest Black woman were both residents in Lagos. Okay, yeah, I am not an economist, but that much we know. Yes, so it shows you the economic power of Lagos. At the same time, Lagos has the smallest land mass in the whole of Nigeria. Okay, out of all the 36 states, including Abuja, it has the smallest landmass and it has the largest population. You have to be resilient to be able to accommodate that. So we look at Lagos as a city with population increase. You know, the government said, you know, the population was increasing, so some of the population was moved to Abuja. And with population increase comes an increase in fire risk. If you have spent some time with firefighters or in the fire department, you would know that generally there is a correlation between human activity and fire risk. Of course, that will explain why we have fewer fires in abandoned buildings, of course. And the increase in population increases fire risk. Also, we talk about space. When you are working with the fire department, you are forced to look at, especially with the plans examinations division and departments like that within that command structure, you are forced to look at space, individual space. How much space is needed to egress? How much space does each member of the occupancy have? And so on and so forth. So we'll apply that to Lagos. How much space does each Lagosian have now? The previous slide. No, before that. Thank you. So Lagos, in terms of land, this part can be interactive, okay? So what's the landmass of Lagos? Depending on who we ask. I mean, the Lagos state official came and told us that, excuse me, she mentioned 3,557 square meters, square kilometers, right? Okay. According to Wikipedia, is 3,345 square kilometers. So we can do the math, okay? We divide it. Does anyone have the answer? By 21 million persons. Let's just use 21 million as a conservative estimate because Lagos population tends to fluctuate and well, there hasn't been a census since 2006. So let's just use 21 million as a conservative estimate. How much does that give us? Can anybody do the math? Anyone? Okay. I see a few people with calculators. Excuse me? Yes, we are talking about 3,345 kilometers square divided by 21 million persons. That's how many meters squared per person? Okay. Anyone? Yeah, per person. You used 160 million people. Okay. 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 That is 160 million persons in Lagos. Okay, that is. I used 21 million. Yes. Okay. Okay, see, oh, you use 16 million. Okay, you use 60 million. Okay. Okay. Any other person interested in the exercise? Let's exercise our brains a bit. Okay, I think we have to multiply it by 1 million. So, okay, so 0.16. Okay, okay. All right. So that is how much space each person has to play with in Lagos. Okay. According. Well, some will tell you it's about, well, if we are going to take out the dimensions of the water bodies and all that, we might be looking at something close to 100 per person. Might be, yeah, yes. So that's not doing too bad. Apart from, although if we now have to take out the roads, setbacks and all that, maybe 70 per person, not doing too badly. Okay. So that is how much space we have to play with. Next slide, please. Okay, so you are forced to look at space. That's just what that's the aim of this whole exercise, that let's look at space, as a concept that based on the characteristics of space, that space can neither be created nor destroyed, just like matter. We get some idea of what we are looking at, because defining space is a very difficult business. So are we space? So is matter anything that has weight and occupies space? Or can we qualify as space? Because what we actually call space, if you are a firefighter, you will know it's filled with gases that are potentially flammable. Yeah. So that is volume. So you cannot, it's already matter. So you too, you are a flammable entity. You and I are space. Yes, we could say that. So we are space, we could say, conclude to some extent, that space and matter are one and the same. Okay? And that is what a city like Lagos forces you to look into. That, because Lagos has been populated and yet there's still enough space. I was discussing with somebody who was quite new to Lagos, and he said he had never, he's a West African. He said he never knew it was possible for so many persons to be in this sort of space, and yet there is still enough space to go around. So that is how you learn to think when you join the fire services. Okay. And we'll now go to an innovation of Lagos that we might have overlooked. The organization I belong to is the Federal Fire Service. Okay. It started in Lagos in 1901. Please, can you push the slides like 3? Okay. Thank you. So, no, yes, it started in Lagos in 1901. It is one of the innovations that come from coastal cities. To put it in perspective, we're about 14 years older than Nigeria, than the idea of Nigeria as a nation. And we're about 60 years older than Nigerian independence. So you have to be patient with the system. In other nations, as we have discussed, what happens is that you have a sitting government, and the sitting government comes up with the idea of a fire service. But in Lagos, in Nigeria, the fire service came before the sitting government, what we know as nationhood now. So the nation has been playing catch up with the fire services. Within over 100 years, next slide, we've moved from that, the Lagos Fire Police, to that, an organization that trains personnel within and outside the country, an organization that is coming up with innovations like the National Fire Academy in Sheda came up in 2010. The first set of graduates were 2011, 12, and so on and so forth. To put it in perspective, the British do not have a National Fire Academy. What they have is the Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst, okay? Yeah. They do not have a National Fire Academy. The Americans do not have a National Fire Academy. So I always tell people, look, you are living in a country that has something that is actually superior to the world powers. You've got to at least celebrate that, acknowledge that. And those ideas actually started from firemen who are based in Lagos and moved to Abuja, and they proposed the idea at the time. So you see that Lagos, yes, is up there when it comes to innovation. We now look at the global trends when it comes to climate change. Yes, February 2024, which is this last February, was generally reported even by the BBC as the hottest on record. Okay, if you look at the fire statistics, it actually bears witness to that. You look at the statistics from 2018 in Lagos. I'm actually quoting the Lagos State Fire Service report that was submitted to federal, which we are looking at 16 fire calls, recorded fire calls. We are not saying those were the only fires in Lagos, but those were the ones that were reported and recorded, compared to over 35, about 35 this last February, according to the statistics from Federal Fire Service Control Room. That is, it has increased more than half. So global warming is not an abstract topic. It is real, okay? And it is actually affecting us as individuals. It is affecting our safety. It's affecting our lives. There are people who have come up with responses to global warming, but we are going to take you through two examples, case studies regarding the response to that and the fire risks associated with those responses. Because when you are coming up with responses to global warming, they should be responses, not reactions, okay? Responses. Two, you need to consult, carry along the first responders and those in the business of checking for your safety. The first response is the Sterling Bank headquarters. Yes, for starters, I would applaud their boldness because they came up with an idea that, I just remember those nights in studio and we'll be talking about it, and that why don't you just make the facade functional? The facade is wasted space. It should be doing something. Okay, yes, so they decide that the facade will be generating electricity. The facade is wasted space. We don't have regular power supply, so let the facade generate electricity. A very brilliant idea. But then there are other challenges that are associated with it. Next slide. A brilliant idea like that can very easily descend into that. Why? The sources of ignition are numerous. Apart from all the people working within the 2 minutes, fantastic. All the people working within the premises, we also have, the solar batteries, all the wires that those can carry fire up there. Yes, like the Greenfield fire disaster. That what in effect happened was that the cladding acted as an accelerant, both in terms of shape, like the Venturi effect, and it just shoots up. So what happens is that it just shoots up and then there's a flashover in each floor where it gets to. Flashover is when the gases are heated and then, maybe there's a fire here and then you just hear boom on the other side and everybody jumps. What happened? It's not juju or your village people. No, it's just simple physics that the gases have ignited because of, well, convection currents. So that is what happened with Greenfield fire. So that is one challenge that is faced from that sort of response. Of course, in the short term, you could look at issues regarding drencher systems specialized with CO2 and all that. The second response was Qatar. They decided to paint their roads light blue, sky blue, to combat the heat. Next slide. So if we try that in Lagos, there are a lot of challenges. This is what might come up. Do you remember the Otedola Bridge fire? Yes. So this might come up, and it will be especially destructive because the paint would act as a fuel to the fire. So it is just going to carry the fire vertical, horizontal flame spread. The previous one was actually an example of vertical flame spread. So we will need a different approach to fire safety, and okay, can you move to the next slide? Then we'll come back to this. Okay. So, which is where the idea of the more holistic fire architecture comes up, which fire architecture is a field where the principles of active and passive fire safety are applied to architectural design. Is the adoption of the occupancy load as a basic unit of design. So as the architect, you ask, first and foremost, what is the occupancy load that the client is looking at? How many persons am I designing for? Very, very important. So it's a different approach to design. We can go back to the previous slide. Yes. We had to quickly, it's been a very, very, we are first responders and all that. So it's been very, very challenging time-wise. So we came up with these two. Some of the initial applications, well, we have to admit are classified, so we can't talk about them. But others, let us just discuss these two. Imagine you have occupancy load of maybe 150, maybe 300. Okay. And the first scenario, you have the one on the bottom, you have maybe 3 floors, 100 occupancy load on each floor. You have a reinforced concrete core, fire rated about 120 minutes to protect all the high risk areas, including the exits. There's the exit access, there's the exit discharge. That is fire safety engineering. So you protect everything, including the server rooms, the electrical rooms, all in that core. The aim is just to protect the occupancy load. So immediately by any chance, there is any spark that can penetrate those walls, they just egress automatically. The other one is, let's assume you have a longitudinal site. That one is actually more technical. Does a lot of thinking, but it is utilizing the Venturi effect to the advantage of the architect, that instead of seeing it as a drawback, you can actually use it. It's the simple principle is this. Imagine having a candle and the candle is lit and then you blow, what happens? The candle goes out, right? Yes, so you design in such a way, especially when you are on the coast in Lagos. Yes, that it's applicable. You can use, some mechanical ventilation techniques to increase the wind speed in such a way that it makes the conditions for fire to ignite and spread impossible, and then you divide the occupancy load maybe 150, such that the occupants are safe. But the conclusion is this, that it's important for architects to synergize with the fire department. If you have any project, you try and get the input of the fire department. Yes, they are there to help you, especially, well, with Federal Fire Service, we have the Plans Examinations Division, and we are very always willing to welcome you and assist in whatever fire safety concerns you have. You should also, as a citizen, value your life, try and find out what the control room number is. It is important to you. You should have it. So you can call Federal Fire Service control room number. If you get any notification from the fire services, please check the bottom for authenticity. That is where the control room number is. God forbid there's a fire, you can just call them directly. If you call me, for instance, what will happen? I will still have to call the control room. That reduces the response time. So thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you very much, CSF Olushoka Abayomi. We'll have the chairman of session and we'll have a short panel discussion with the speaker before he leaves. Please, if you have questions, you can raise your hand up when we're taking the question and answers, and we'll take them.
Thank you very much, everybody. We'll make this as quick and as short as possible. CSF Olushoga Abayomi from the Federal Fire Service, Lagos Zone F, gave us a new understanding into fire. Now I see it differently, and I trust that after his presentation, you have seen it differently. He told us a fire architecture story. He talked about the importance of stopping to think. Far from having to design our spaces and do the things we do as architects, we really need to be able to take a deep breath and then think about how we are doing the things we are doing. Luckily, I happen to have, come up with some kind of fire initiatives in some office buildings that I've been lucky to work on in the past. So these importances are really never well spelled. Mr. Olushoga Abayomi described the developmental evolution of Lagos as it affects, the fire service. He gave us a better understanding of the concept of space, which I am sure that you and I as architects understand. He gave us an history on the fire service in Nigeria and some kind of contextual understanding of fire services in other parts of the world. He reported on, the implication of heat and how we have had, on record, the hottest periods in the world, and how, we have been able to respond, how some companies or some bodies, some institutions have been able to respond, right, to, their developments. He gave an example of a facade conversion by Sterling Bank, which was quite innovative, was contextual, and was nice, in my opinion. So we'll be having a panel discussion now, and we'll be taking questions. We'll be having a discussion now. I would be taking questions from the floor, and then we can find ways with which we would, share our ideas, share expertise to try to answer, some of the questions that you may have for us. So please, if anybody has questions now, we can entertain them. And then Mr. Olushoga Abayomi and I would, treat this together. Thank you very much. And we've also been told now.
We're going to have architect Pat Okonta, FNIA, to join the conversation. Please, a round of applause for her as she comes up.
While we're waiting for Architect Pat Okonta, thank you very much for your contribution. There's someone who has been in supportive of LAF for the past 15 years. When it was created, it was part of it. Not only is a past president of NIQS, a past president of Commonwealth Association of Quantity Surveyor, and that's in the person of QS, and also a past president of APBN, QS Ajanle Koko, Shegwa Ajanle Koko. You're very welcome. Thanks for your support. He was there at the beginning when we started, and he's still following us for the past 15 years. Auntie Pat, yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. So this panel discussion is for all of the three presentations that we had earlier. The first presentation was by Mr. Shukwa, and the second one was by Dr. Folayinka Dania, and then the third one was by Mr. Olusoga Bayomi. So we'll use this opportunity to, have a well-rounded discussion on all of these things, and then we can then take questions, and then we'll pick the discussions from there.
I think we should go first.
Luckily, we have Mr. Olusoga Bayomi, who is here now. He's one of the speakers who just, of course, made their presentation. And we would like to ask if you have, other things that you may just want to shed some light on, something you may have forgotten whilst you made your presentation. This is an opportunity for you to, use this, just chip it in, and then we'll pick it from there.
Well, what is it on the presentation or just
general? Yeah, on the presentation, as it affects architecture, as it affects space, especially as it affects, the theme of the program, Lagos resilience and climate adaptation. It's very important.
Okay. I remember my days as a frontline firefighter. A pano, and
he said pano.
Yes. Yes, and we used to turn out to fires, different places at different times. And it was very, very challenging. And what first occurred to me was just how, should I say, aggressive some members of the public could be towards firefighters, and I had heard about that, but experiencing it firsthand was quite an eye-opener. I remember trying to physically protect a Lagos State firefighter from getting beaten up, and then the mob turned on us. It wasn't funny at all. Yes, we got a really good beating. So by the time I moved up the ladder, I understood the need for that common ground to be established with members of the public.
I have to make a very quick announcement. So if you have students on this level at the moment, we are asked to come to the back of the hall for a very short announcement. So please, if you have students who are in this program at the moment, we are asked to come to the back of the hall for an important announcement. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Okay, so many times I tried to empathize, to understand their anger. I said, yes, I understand it can be very frustrating, watching lives at risk, property going down, and then the firefighters come late, and then there's no water and all that, and it's transferred aggression. Actually, it is not at you, so you shouldn't take it personal. So that was what I had learned earlier, and over time I now learned the importance of connecting with people and getting people to understand that, you know, the strength of a nation comes from its public services. Okay. It's if the public services are working, functioning properly, then the nation will move forward. But if the public services are constantly being, well, looked down upon, they are constantly, you know, being at the lowest rung of the ladder. And we are looking at climate change now. Climate change, Ebola, COVID forced humanity to look inward. That look, you know, we all have common threats that are common to everybody, regardless of tribe, of ethnicity, of social or economic background. So we need, as much as possible, to understand each other and work together. More and more, the world will be facing threats that are common to everybody, not just class-based threats. So it's very important for us to understand that now going forward.
We have to announce again, students are to move immediately to the back of the hall. It's a very, very urgent request.
I think we have a question from Agbaje.
Architect Agbaje, thank you very much, sir.
My question is just a general view of what architect have just been saying. In your presentation, you made us understand that this year is one of the hottest. But if I understand very well, I think the firefighters should not just do the firefighting. There should be awareness. As a young guy, I lived near I was born near where the headquarters of firefighter is. I grew up in Goshen, and in those days, I know there were some few things, particularly on how people, when you arrange your place, we feel firefighter not only as a fighter, but at times they involve in preventing. Those days, I don't know now, this time is totally different because from all indications, with what you just said now, particularly few of us that are here had the advantage of hearing that. A lot of people don't know that even with the heat, it's related to bringing more fire. The last incident in Lagos Island, particularly Dosumu, was a big disaster. But not in Dosumu, majority of the streets in Lagos where you have this commercial leasing, there was big challenges of how they put their generator. We are already there. NEPA is not NEPA. I mean, NEPA is not light. Just name, even with the band and no band or not this thing, we know in Lagos, we are not getting enough. So you cannot prevent people not to even use the generator. With the usage they are having now, the space is not there. So they can, it's only in Lagos I discovered that people put generator on a high-story building. So what are the firefighters are doing in preventing instead of fighting? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for that question. You would have noticed that I have, from what was read, I have worked the plans review and approval, you know, at Abuja. And then when I came to Lagos, okay, I worked as a frontline firefighter before I was brought into the office. So a lot has been going on. And as always, a lot still needs to be done, but we are working on awareness. I had a presentation for ACAN, Association of Consulting Architects of Nigeria. That was in 2020, shortly after the NSAS protests, which was arguably the most extensive incendiary experience that Lagos has seen in living memory. In fact, it was part of what made us in Plans Examinations Division come up with a QR code for the control room number, because we actually had to start calling citizens we know are compliant and responsible one by one after the incident, find out, are you safe? They will say, yes, okay, fine. I'm going to send you a QR code now via WhatsApp. It was a one-on-one thing. So it was not we've been working round the clock, and it was a period when we were bombarded by phone calls. Because we felt we had to come up with something to combat that. Also, I discussed with the Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria in 2021 on the same issue, and questions were fielded. We talked about the importance of engaging the fire services even before construction, even as at the time you come up with an estate and you are thinking of building an estate. We have Amen Estate, we've got Lackwell Lakes. Those were the two who actually consulted with us, and we are still working with them. It's not a finished job yet. We helped them to see that it is possible to actually reduce response time just from the design of the estate alone, that you can start from that and reduce response time between the high-risk areas and the fire services. So those are the initiatives we've been coming up with. We agree that there's still a lot to be done. Yes, we are faced with a lot of challenges, but we are still working on it, on awareness to the members of the public.
Okay, thank you so much, Architect Olusoga. Yeah, I did listen to your presentation, and I was so happy that we've said so much about awareness. But the level of awareness that we take things to in Nigeria always baffles me. When it comes to things concerning politicians and making money illegally and illicitly, the level of awareness is so high, and everybody's so keen on listening and buying in and knowing where they can participate. But this concerns lives and property of Nigerians. It's so important that with the climate change, everything is hotter, everything is drier. If a single spark starts anywhere, the fire will take off. Even I know in some parts of America, you don't even need a spark and you get forest fires. We haven't reached that stage yet. We have developers that are building houses that are 3 centimeters apart from each other. Well, Architect Muiwa has gone now. I remember we did the Great Fire of London in history, where everything was so crowded together, and the fire came, and the whole of London had to be rebuilt. They still have terrace houses in one long row, but then they have things like party walls. Here, the developers don't know what is a party wall. So there must be something inputted in our approval systems that says, if you don't have the Federal Fire Service certification, do not even go to site, because the profession of houses that are jam-packed is overriding now. And honestly, climate change is real. So I think I can only suggest if the budget for awareness can be enhanced.
Okay, yes, yeah. We do actually have legal backing, yes, with the National Fire Safety Code, Section 10. There are other sections discussing emergency action plans, comprehensive emergency action plans during construction and after completion of buildings. You are supposed to have comprehensive, which includes not just fire, we also have active shooter. You are supposed to have for flooding, depending on the area, and so on and so forth. Ideally, we are even supposed to have simulations. Okay, yes. So yes, we are concerned with fire, but we are liaising with other agencies to see how we can simulate other emergencies. But as always, I always urge people to be patient, with the system. That it's challenging for everybody involved. So little by little, we'll get there.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I was going to ask, how have you been able to manage the challenges of introducing fire safety strategies? For example, in existing buildings where, we have we have a restoration process in place, and there's the need for you to improve that strategy for that maybe existing building or a converted building. How do you work around this?
Can I add to the question? Also, for existing buildings where you have even given them approval, are there things put in place like regular inspections? Because I've been to the mall once and the fire exit was a storage space with curtains. So things like ensuring that these policies are adhered to.
Very good point. Yes, we do carry out regular inspections. You would have heard that I've carried out over 500 inspections and counting in Lagos. It's just a conservative estimate. I remember it must have been between 2012 and 2014 to, well, especially 2015. That was practically all I was doing. I'll just get to the office. I'll go to the OIC. He will give me a list of buildings to inspect, because at the beginning of the year, the buildings to be covered were drawn out. He'll give me a list of the buildings to inspect. He'll give me the personnel to work with me and any other logistics, and that's it. That was all we were doing in Lagos, all through Lagos, everywhere in Lagos. By the time we started the plans examinations division, then we started actually inspecting building sites. So there are inspections, but there is, like we said, that there's a direct link between human activity and fire risk, that you cannot control what the actions or the inactions of humans. For instance, in the PRI department, I remembered that we had that line, and we will state in the report that this was what we meant as at the time of inspection. I will give the time and the date, specific time. I will also mention the people who are involved, because of course you don't know what will happen after you leave. You might leave the place and things will change, and this kind of report will come, and you will say, look, I got there was no problem. So what happened between the last 48 hours? This thing happened. So these are the challenges that we face too when it comes to inspection.
Okay. Thank you very much. We can only use this opportunity to implore the fire service, to keep up the good work that they've been doing. We know that operating any regulatory or non-regulatory organization in Nigeria is a feat. Is a feat. We understand that. So we would like to maybe ask if we have questions from the floor. Then we'll be very quick with it. Another person has a question over there. After that, we'll take your question. Please carry on. Thank you very much, sir.
Good evening, sir. My question is simple. Recently, there have been federal fire service going to sites to ask for documentations and other things. Are there specific documents that are expected to be submitted to them? At what level should we submit those documents? And what are the criteria for those documents?
Thank you very much. According to the National Fire Safety Code, you should actually get a site suitability report before you actually move to site. That's what the code specifies. So you should come at the bubble diagram stage when you are still thinking of erecting the building. That has happened a grand total of once in over 10 years. In fact, I remember the day it happened, I can't forget, because we were all just staring at the man that you have the money to build, you have the site, but you're actually coming to, yes, it took us almost 15 to 20 minutes just to get that, oh, he is coming to get our input before moving to site. So it's important that that is done, a whole lot more of that is done by architects. That reduces the bottlenecks you will receive. In most places, we have to send junior officers to hunt them down, and there's a lot of intelligence gathering and all that. It's a whole field on its own. So that will be reduced if the architects actually engage the fire service before moving to site. In terms of documentation, of course, if you receive a notification, it's usually the full set of drawings, architectural, structural, M&E, and so on and so forth. There is, like I mentioned, there's a document called a comprehensive emergency action plan, which will specify all the planned responses to various emergencies. So that too, if available, can be submitted. We always encourage that so that we can also have our input at that stage. But as much as possible, we encourage all those in the building profession to engage the fire services even before the construction starts.
Okay, so thank you very much for that response. This is another opportunity where we see that there's a need for increased collaboration. And also we would like to take the other question from that.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you very much for all the speakers for giving us details and explanations that we needed to hear. Unfortunately, Dr. She's not around.
Olayinka Daniel.
Olayinka Daniel, yeah. There is actually a pressing concern that I have. I'm always keen about topics about sustainability and resilience like this. But over the years, I observed that these so-called awarenesses that we actually organize are not that effective, because when a 10% of us are trying to plan out something, trying to correct some things, we see the other 90% destroying the whole plan and everything that we have actually tried to carry out. How can we actually sensitize the public in a more effective way? And when I mean sensitize the public, I mean from the grassroots, sensitizing children, let them grow up with that idea of this is how it should be done. Not when they get to the stage of someone like me. I probably would not have understood all this all me if I didn't study architecture. I don't know if you understand what I mean. So how can we, because if we are trying to solve a problem and we have a bigger majority that don't even know about the problem, they're just parabolating around, how do we solve it? Thank you very much.
Thank you. That question is a vital question. I'll be honest with you, before she left, I asked her a similar question and she made me understand that, well, she works in the Lagos Resilience Office. I happened to work with her, I mean, in my official capacity as an architect to the state government. So I have related with her over the years. And I asked her how, they track their successes in that office. Because I worked with her and she made me understand that, she said they have other initiatives with which they track development, they track risk management, and then they track sensitization. So before the problem starts, they really have ways with which they use, and which is what she just told me. They have ways with which they monitor these things before they happen. I wish she were here, where she would have been able to give us better insights in answering this question. But I discussed this with her, and then she made me understand that they have consultants that they work with. They too are consultants for the government, and that they usually carry out these initiatives. Unfortunately, these things are somewhat salient. So they are not things that you may see, but they are underground works that are ongoing.
Chairman, can I say something?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I have a different view on making sure that everybody follows. I think every single change that has to be made starts with just you. You make up your mind that you are going to do the right thing. You make up your mind that you are going to use sustainability principles in the forefront of your design. Once you make that impact, I know the architect that designed the mosque, and he used some local bricks. It's been publicized worldwide. So we can't get everybody to think in the same direction at the same time. But any movement just starts with one person. So if every single one of us in this hall decides to do our own bit, I think we'll be starting to make that impact.
That architect is architect Ade Shokunbi, Patrick Wahid Design Company. We have a question from architect Abimbola Jai. Then we'll take one more question now, and then we'll round up the session. There's one more question. We have to be very quick with these questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I wish Mr. Shukwoshashore was here so that he would tell us how we can, as architects, key into how we can use the past. And I think we should take it more seriously now. We should start looking towards how we can use the past to design
a sustainable future, you know, starting with us, like you said, one step at a time. And with the resilience officer, are you involved in the building code that we are trying to develop for Lagos State now? It is very, very important. And then to our fire officer, thank you for your paper. That was very good. But I noticed that you said about protecting, I can't remember what it was now, with a concrete core. It's in your paper. What was it again? It was, yeah.
Yes.
Protecting
yes.
Valuable
The
documents,
high risk
areas with
yes,
concrete core.
Should be programmed within the high risk areas within the building should be programmed within that.
I want to ask you that, can you shift your focus from using concrete to protect? Because right now, studies have started showing that concrete actually fails under fire faster than wood. I don't know how or why, but it is coming up. I mean, it is a study, and right now in the West, in North America and in Europe, a lot of buildings are going back. I mean, a lot of architects and engineers are going back to building with wood, you know, and they have discovered that concrete actually fails. Concrete expands, steel melts, you know. So how can you shift your focus from protecting high-risk stuff with concrete and moving to more sustainable materials that is environmentally friendly than concrete that causes most of the carbon emission that we have right now, that is giving us all the problems in the... Thank you.
Thank you very much for that point. The importance was, the emphasis was on the fire rating. Okay, concrete was just an option. Okay, so it's, for now, it's still the most well, in Nigeria, yes, the most available option. When you're talking of fire treated, flame retardant wood, it has to be treated, and it's not that common. Flame retardant material, well, if we were even to suggest to the government that it should be subsidized, because it's actually very expensive. So that's one of the challenges we face. So yes, there are several options, but I just use the concrete as an option. But the importance is actually of the fire rating, because I mentioned about 120 minutes. You know, that is what, yes.
I'm sorry, just in 30 seconds. For the wood, the study shows that when wood is burning, it forms a charred surrounding, which is already carbon, and it now protects the wood that is inside. So after a while, wood stops burning. I don't know, and not necessarily treated wood, but treated wood is the best, really. So just check.
Thank you very much. There is actually flame retardant. There are also flame retardant plants, which we recommend for estates. You know, that when you are building a housing estate and you are going to be planting around high-risk areas, there are studies that have shown that yes, there are flame retardant plants that can be planted around that, and you can use it. But I just mentioned the concrete, like I said, as an option. It is, the fire rating is the most important. That, okay, make sure that the fire rating allows for the occupancy to egress within, because we believe 120 minutes should be enough for about 300 persons to egress. That is actually the main point of that presentation. Yes, thank you very much for that point.
Thank you. I think we have one more question from that point.
Okay, good afternoon, sirs. My question goes to my guy at the top, Mr. Pano. What are your plans to increase the awareness of fire outbreak and management for the general public? What are the plans? That's number one. The second question is, do you have any program, directly or indirectly, for students in institutions of architectures, how they can manage fire in their designs, aside from the architecture side of study?
Thank you very much. As for awareness, we are working on that. We are synergizing with the journalists, and we have a whole department doing that. On social media, they've been trying their best to, raise awareness of fire risks, of fire incidents, and what the Federal Fire Service actually did to combat the fire. So it's ongoing. Yeah, we are still looking to other avenues of raising the awareness. Press conferences have been held and so on and so forth, especially before the last quarter of the month. If you have been observant, because that's when you have the highest number of fires. In fact, off the record, it's difficult to get a leave during the 6 week leave that was mentioned. You can't get it in fire service during that period because all hands are on deck. You can't leave because we know that is when those are high risk periods, for fire. So, but the awareness has been raised. You will be seeing during before periods like that, you will see press conferences and so on and so forth. As for taking it to architectural students, we are in the process of doing that. As always, it takes time before we reach the masses, the people, and also the professionals as much as we would love to. But we are already in talks. That's what I can say for now.
Thank you very much. And I think to piggyback from that point, this could be another time to remind that, you see, there's the need for research, there's the need for collaboration, like I always say, right? From the universities, we can always get ideas that can better the systems of firefighting. There's equally the need for more men in the fire service. There's the need for more men in public service so that these entities can be better served, and then they can better serve the people. So I think at this point, I would like to call this session to a close. If I believe that we don't have any other questions, I would like to thank the firefighter who has joined us for this session. I'd equally like to thank Architect Okunta for partnering with us on this session. We're indeed very, very grateful. The Institute is available for further collaboration, further questions, further insights, ideas. We can always get back to the chapter, and then the discussion can continue from there. It does not stop here. Thank you very much, everybody. We're indeed very, very grateful.
Please, more round of applause for the discussant. And most especially, I call her Auntie Pat. She was the celebrity architect for last year's forum. And she's always been there for us. Auntie Pat, thank you very much. Round of applause for her once more, please. You still have one more.
Please don't leave yet.
You're going to help us to make a presentation to Sugar, please. Can you bring the plaque, please? While my Egmont, because Ajanle Kogo get ready to help us to give to the chairman of the session. So Auntie Pat, please kindly help us to present that to.
On behalf of Nigerian Institute of Architects, Lagos State Chapter, on the occasion of LAF 15, I hereby present you this plaque for collaborating with us and for giving us a beautiful presentation and promising that we will be contacting the fire service from day zero henceforth. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Ajali Koko, please, to present to our chairman of session.
I've always thought I can hide and come in and go out without any disturbance, but that's not true. In recognition of the role you played, as the chairman of this session, I hereby, on behalf of NIQS Lagos chapter, present NIA Lagos chapter presents you with this plaque in appreciation of your efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. A quick announcement before we have the closing remark and the vote of thanks. Courtesy NIA Lagos State chapter will be having a little get together and reception. They call it hospitality. Yes, hospitality. Yeah. Let's take something in, drink something. Let's enjoy the moment at Freedom Park. We all know where Freedom Park is, right? By 6 p.m. We are meeting there for a little hospitality, Today, 6 p.m. today. Jackie introducing.
No, don't bother. Thank you. Go and sit down. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, architects, permit me to stand on existing protocol, but I would like to also specially recognize my chairman, Architect David Majekudumi. I think it's been a very, very successful event so far since yesterday. And we would like to extend our gratitude to you for your support, for your patience. We had a slight delay this morning, and you are still here sitting with us. We're grateful. We hope that this day has been impactful to us and to the profession, and especially to the younger generation that is here. I can see a lot of veteran architects and young ones, and I will say happening architects or the architects that are the ones in charge of the new world, if I will say that, because I saw some architects here and they have moved into property development, and then we had a very robust conversation, which also dovetails back to the theme of the event, how we can make our designs more realistic to the current climatic conditions that we have, which I think is the theme and the goal we are trying to achieve with the topic of this forum. Not to start my own lecture, I'm just here to give a vote of thanks. I especially thank Architect Abimbola Ajayi, who happens to be one of the veterans of our chapter, a past chairman. Our support has been tremendous every year. In fact, it's too consistent. But I pray that God will keep you all. Architect Patience Okonta, thank you very much. Architect Olawumi Agbaje, thank you, sir. Everyone here has contributed one way or the other, and we're grateful. Tomorrow is going to be a better day. We're going to have the closing ceremony, and I must report myself publicly to my chairman that he mentioned earlier about a raffle draw. We have decided as a committee to give the gifts to the students. So why we called the students out was to give them a small assignment between today and tomorrow by 1 p.m., which they'll be submitting to the secretariat for grading, and the gifts will be given out to the students as first, second, third, and fourth prize. So there's no raffle draw anymore. Well, okay, sir. Whatever you see, sir. But there is a competition, so chairman will need to see what to give them. Well noted, sir. So we have our home hospitality tonight at Freedom Park. As many as can make it, we will be grateful and appreciative to share that time with you. Thank you very much. Good night.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of day 2, the Lagos Architects Forum Lab 15. God bless you. We really appreciate your coming. To all our sponsors, all our exhibitors, God bless you. PM Direct, our exhibitor, God bless you. Multi-T Log